Unleash your creativity with your micro welder, episode 12. Today we are going to embellish my Apple Watch, which I love because it's really functional and useful, but it's not my style. So I'm going to add some more bling to it. I'm going to add some permanent chains here, which I can take on and take off and put on and stack up. And the other thing you can do is I always put it's always here, and there are these extra holes. So I could consider putting some permanent chains this way. So we're going to try to do that. And if not an Apple Watch, Fitbit, all sorts of possibilities that anything that you have to wear because it is functional, we can make it pretty. It's really simple. And I have this chain I really like because it's enamel. It's got little dots of white. And what you want to do is not put it here because it'll slip down anyway, but put it somewhere here. I'm going to figure out that I don't want it too tight because I want to be able to slip it on and off without it being too difficult, but not loose. So I am going to use a jump ring first to catch the end here. Okay. And I'm going to pull on this. And actually, I now know which, but make sure that's horizontal. I want as little slack as possible. Okay, I think I actually want it tight. So I know whereabouts. This. And I'm going to let it drape naturally like this. So I'm going to let it drape naturally like this. Oops. Make sure that I've got it. I shouldn't have cut it so tightly, but it will work. And because I'm going to be able to slip it on, I'm just going to do this. This is 24 gauge gold filled. I've got it at 7 watts. I'll put it close to the camera so you can see better. Okay. I'm not using any argon gas there. And I know from just looking at it that it's solid, but I am going to check. Okay, so I've got a little bracelet for my Apple Watch, and this would have been a really nice ring too. Okay, and I want it to be exactly tight so I could do this and it slides on. Perfect fit. Isn't that cute? Actually, I'm going to stack them up. And I have to say, I think it's a lot prettier than having just a plain band. And I'm going to stack up. There we go. I think it would be nice having a whole bunch and here. So for these, I would have to weld on top. But for these, that can be removed easy. I have a quick tip. I like jump rings. They're easy to use. Sometimes though, aesthetically, I like them to be instead of round, a bit flatter because of the chains that I'm using. So instead of using a jump ring, I would cut a link from, say, a paperclip chain like this while I slip through a chain so that my charms will hang off of this instead of a round jump ring. I'm going to demonstrate what I mean while I am making a lucky bracelet for my Apple Watch. First, I am going to cut out a bunch of these loops, these links, out of this paperclip chain because I'm going to use them. So I'm just going to cut every other one. And I think I want 7. So now I am going to measure out another one of these bracelets for my Apple Watch and cut the correct length of chain. So easiest way is to start with this end. Right. So now I want to put these through before closing. And since I know these are the first stones I want, I might as well put those up first. But I can add those later if I wish. And I'm going to put 7 because that's my lucky number. And I'm going to put these 3 birthstones and then I'll figure out if I want more on it or leaving them empty. We'll see what it looks like. Now I am going to weld the drop beads. And how I do this is very easy. I use thin wire that is thin enough so that when it is doubled up, so 2 strands, it will go through the hole of the bead. And here I use round nose pliers and I fold over and squeeze so that now I've got a little keyhole, a little round circle from which to hang my link like this. I open it up, slide it through, and now it will swivel very easily. Then what I'm going to do is put that, both the ends, through into the stone bead. And I'm pinching the ends a little bit so that it's going to be small, and when I put it through the bead like this, it will be flush. Now notice that I've decided here, in fact, the turquoise, the hole of the bead is rather large. And my concern is when I weld it, it might not be big enough. The drop, the ball that is going to be at the end, is not going to be big enough for the bead to not slide back out. So I'm going to use that, the 28 gauge, for the pink tourmaline bead because the hole is a little bit smaller. So that's what I do. See, here's a close-up. I pull it through and there is a loop at the end. And I'm going to pinch the loop slightly smaller because I want there to be less slack so that the bead doesn't drop as much, like this. And this method works for all drops, any sort of beads with a straight hole. So now I push it a little bit further up, like this, and then I'm going to be trimming it. And this is a great way of doing any sort of pendants, drops, and you can pre-make your connectors. So I'm going to use my flush cutters. I'm going to cut it, leaving about 2 millimeters on top. That's just enough to make a ball. Now I'm going to hold on to it at the end with my grounded pliers. I find that grounded pliers are much easier to manipulate and work with than just the ground. And here with the 2 wires, I use higher electricity than single wired weld. This is the result. And there is oxidation. I did not use argon gas for this, and there will be less oxidation with argon gas, but it's fine. I use the bristle brush and I remove the residue. And the other thing you can do is actually you can clean with soap and water as well. So that is the result. That's how easy it is. When it melts like that, the ball forms, and because it isn't very loose, the 2 wires, when the ball forms, it's just enough. And that is a very well done drop. It is clean. And what I like about that is the elongated loop. And you can put 2 to 3 strands of chains through. Now we repeat for all the other beads. Okay. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit, but it's the same repeated process. I'm using 26 gauge wire for this. And I do the same thing. I pinch. When your bead is bigger, whole, you can use thicker wire, and this works for larger pieces as well. I've done other videos. Okay, and this is a close-up for the citrine. And in pinching the loop, I like using round nose pliers because it's a little bit smoother and not a square pinch. And the thing is, it's so small that I often drop the beads as I'm trying to film far away from my face. Okay, so that is the finished product, and I trim. It's much better to trim both evenly, less important the length, but that right and left is even. So there it is, because then your ball is not going to be lopsided. And that's all it takes. 1 zap, and I have put it at 9 watts power. All you have to do now is remove the residue, and there is your finished charm. I'm going to do the same thing with turquoise. So turquoise is the traveling stone, the traveler stone. It brings luck and safety for travelers. And whether or not you believe in it is a different story. But it is very useful. And I find that it helps me, gives me peace of mind. And it's also great for birthstones. And you can have these items pre-done for your clients to select from. So any sort of loop will work. If you have just round jump rings, you can press down after you weld to create a different sort of oval. Okay, so the other thing is, sometimes if the wire you're using is a bit tight, it helps to coax it a little bit by twisting as you push through, like a corkscrew, like this. Okay, there we go. And we're going to trim again. I like to use 9 watts at 2 millimeters of wire that is exposed. And that's all it takes. If it is the case that you're cutting a little bit longer, you might have to do it a few times and you'll create a slightly larger ball, which is another method if the hole is large. Okay, So I've laid them out exactly in the order that I want. It's a lot easier to plan out, because sometimes you're looking at the reverse, to plan out everything you're going to thread. And the tricky thing with chain, sliding them through beads or jump rings, is that because they're soft and wiggly, it's hard to control. So I have a hack for that I've spoken about. And basically it is that you use wire and you mock up a needle. So a makeshift threading needle by folding the two pieces of wire together like this, and then thread through your loop like this. And now you have pretty much a stronger guide. The other thing is, this also works for ribbon and leather. In that case, you might have to double up through the leather. If it's too thick, you might have to wire wrap your wire around one end of the leather to guide through. And with ribbon, sometimes if it's very thin, you can just use it like you would a thread. Here, I'm just threading through all of the jump ring links. The other thing is, if the loops are very big, you might want to anchor the end like this chain with a larger jump ring. I have a small jump ring, but using either wire or larger jump ring so that it stops your loops or beads from falling up through the other end. Okay, so now it is ready, and I take back my jump ring, which fell out, and I thread through the end. Oh, by the way, it's really hard at my age, looking a foot away, these tiny things. But I thread it through like this, and I bring it over and thread through the other end of the chain. And because the folded guiding needle is good to handle with, I don't take that out until later, until I have looped in both ends, close the jump ring like this, and I'm fairly certain that is good, and then I just remove the wire backwards, if I can see it. There we go, like this. It's a great hack for many uses, including elastic. So now I have pretty much a mini necklace. And I make sure that it's closed properly. And the other thing I find that sometimes you can't see the tiny ring after you closed it properly. And one of the easiest things to do is use your fingernail, the tip, to run over it, and you can feel where it is. I like to always put the seam at 12 degrees. Okay, now we're ready to weld. I've got it back to 7-watt power. All I need is one zap, and there we have finished, and I'm cleaning it up. There you go. Now I have my mini lucky talisman necklace for my Apple Watch. And if it is a case that it's a bit tighter than you had anticipated, you can fold your watch band as you guide through, or also, if your measurements were wrong, you can just press down on the jump ring a bit, and that gives you an extra, it will elongate it enough to make it more comfortable. And there we have it. Ta-da! Here are the finished bracelets for my Apple Watch with my lucky talisman stones and birthstone. I love it because it matches my style far more. Hope you found that episode to be interesting. And if you did, please like and subscribe and comment below. I'd love to hear from you. And actually, it helps the algorithm. I'm a wholesaler of premium quality chains and findings, as well as micro welders. I'm going to leave a note below, a little bit more information about our company and what you've seen in this video.